The way I see it, New Zealanders pride themselves on being resilient. But we all know that's not always the case, and anyone can go through tough times. In many ways, though, it's the struggles we go through that actually shape us as people. I'm Scotty Stevenson, and I'm about to meet some incredible Kiwis to have some meaningful, revealing, inspiring, and hopefully helpful conversations about their own day-to-day challenges and what it's like to come through the other side of mentally tough times and get back on the up.
Inspector, Scotty.
Welcome to The Upside, brought to you by AIA Vitality.
Detective Inspector Scott Beard. I don't know what to call you. Do I call you Detective Inspector? Do we make it formal, or is Scott okay?
Scott. Even some of my staff call me Scott. Some have to call me Sir, but yeah, I'm happy with Scott. That's my name.
Well, I'll go with Scott for this. Firstly, thank you. I know you're an incredibly busy person, but we have a wide-ranging discussion with you because you're so well placed to discuss so many of the issues that many of us face on a daily basis around anxiety and health issues and mental well-being. First of all, if you could, just explain to us what your job is.
So as a detective inspector, I oversee serious crime. I have specific focus, like I'm in charge of the child protection team, which is all about child abuse, the adult sexual assault team, the child exploitation, which is the online abuse of children, the child sex offender management team, those on the sex register, and I have the financial crime unit, which obviously all the fraud scams. I have a major crime team, and part of that is our national security persons of interest that we look at. But obviously a homicide comes in and depends what's happening, who's available, because I have a counterpart as to who picks it up and runs with it.
What an incredibly challenging job that is, just the scope of it for starters. And I know you would have a really big team around you and a very highly qualified team, but if I can pick up on a couple of those aspects, when you think about child abuse and child exploitation, homicide, such a big part of your job is to give really bad news and to hear really bad news that kicks off the investigation to start with. How tough is that mentally for you?
Look, a lot of our day job and a lot of our staff, what we're dealing with is death and tragedy. That's our work. And particularly when you're dealing with families, it can be emotional because, and I look back at a case where I was with the whānau of a murdered victim, and on Christmas Day they have to identify their murdered son, and it was so sad. And you have to empathise with them because put yourself in their shoes. How do they feel? How do they want to be treated? That's what I try and tell the staff, and that's how I try and act. I try and treat them the way I would want to be treated.
You are widely renowned as one of the best investigators in the country, Scott, but you're also a boss, and already in this conversation you've mentioned your staff multiple times, which shows me you care greatly about them. How do you manage those staff in situations where you can see that while you're coping, someone may not be? Because I'm sure that is a very regular occurrence for you.
Yeah, it's important, particularly in this day and age, that we are conscious of our staff's welfare and wellness. And whether it's the hours we're working or how many days we're working, but you've got to look and say, right, we need our staff to be at their best. We can't thrash them until they're no longer capable of doing something. So we have to give them that time off, that days off. And I'm comfortable with that. If we had to work Christmas Day, and we had to a couple of years ago on a homicide, but those staff who had young families, I said, come in late, wake up, open presents for the kids, come in late. Those who had a bigger family, if you come in early, finish early so you go to the lunch and stuff like that. And so you cater for them because ultimately we can't do our job if our staff aren't capable of doing it. And so we have to look after them.
At one point in the course of what this year will be 44 years on the force, which is staggering to me, especially in the line of work that you've chosen, you went and saw a police psychologist. And I'm sure that it's been more than once during your career where you've needed that added support, that external support. Do you mind sharing with us a moment where you thought, I need a little bit of help here in dealing with my emotional and mental state?
Yeah, I'm very conscious, particularly after seeing the police psychologist, of the accumulation effect. We're dealing with, as I say, death and tragedy on a daily basis. And I have grandchildren. I don't want to be moping around sad granddad. I want to be active, live, honey, having fun. And so I have to make sure I take care of myself. And I don't know if I felt I actually needed to go and see the psychologist, but I thought, no, it's a good time to go and see the psychologist because you don't really know, Scott. And yes, you can be tough and get through things, but are you? And this is where I learned about the accumulation effect, some coping strategies, and I told myself, and I'm not embarrassed to say I've been to the police psychologist. I want my staff to know that because I don't want them to feel that they have to burden themselves and try and deal with stuff themselves because that's not good for you. That's not good for your mental health, your wellness, and it's not good for your family.
You joined the force in 1980. It's 2024. Going to a psychologist in the 80s as a police officer, that would not have happened, would it?
No, not at all. Way back then, and I think, sometimes it's your background, you're growing up, your resilience you have, but there was you were expected to be resilient. And
what is that, a code word for tough?
Yeah, harden up. Take a concrete pill and harden up.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you're told that yourself. No, you can deal with it, harden up. And society changes and the world out there's changed. And I think it's really important that we take make a conscious effort in terms of our staff to be looking for any signs. And look, we have some of our squads, our adult sexual assault team, child protection team, child exploitation, our crime squad, they all have mandatory psychological visits with a psychologist. That's just standard, mandatory, because we have to look after them. New Zealand Police have come so far in terms of how the staff can get help when they need it. Tragically, I'm aware of 3 staff I knew who've committed suicide way back. And you think, maybe if we had that then, they wouldn't have.
Yeah. I know you've spoken a lot about Grace Mullane, but I would like to talk to you about your ability to be calm and stoic is, I guess, central to who you are and what you do. You have to front a lot of media conferences. You have to be very clear and concise in your language and cautious too in investigations. There was one moment where we saw that training maybe fall away, and that was after Grace's body was found and you had to front the media, a late press conference with the media. Does that stick out for you as quite possibly the toughest you've ever had it, fronting the media on that occasion?
Yeah, it was for a number of reasons. The media pressure and intensity on that investigation was huge. It was international media. And we'd worked, it wasn't a long investigation, but we'd worked long hours. And then on the last day out at the Waitakaris, we knew we found the suitcase, Grace, and then within a minute or two, having to get a message to David Mullane, because I'd always said to him, you'll hear before the media hears. And then my media person just said, you're going to say this. And so basically within 5 minutes of being there with Grace's suitcase, I'm back in front of international media, and there's a lot to media. And you're tired, there's no prep, haven't got in the zone. And it was just the question was how the family feel. And I went, how do you think the family feel? I had a daughter in her 20s, and I know I said that because I did. And you have to feel with the family, but that got the emotion out. I'd say there's tiredness in there, there was no prep. There was pressure.
Your job is quite often a battle between realism, which can very easily become cynicism, and hope. And those two don't often go well together. The hope that an investigation is going to end up well in the case of Grace Mullane, but the knowledge, the experience to say this does not end well. Do you ever allow your hopes to get up too high and have to chastise yourself and say, don't do this? You can't ride that emotional roller coaster.
It depends on the nature of the investigation. Like a number of homicides where we know it is definitely a homicide that you're dealing with. The aim, and always the aim, is to find who did this and hold them accountable. And the belief is we're going to do this. But there are some unsolved homicides. And that is frustrating. But that is also reality. Like we can do so much, but we can't do everything. And sometimes it's just one piece of information that you're missing. But yeah, it's holding that belief, because you want the staff, the morale to be high. And so you have to hold that belief. Yeah, we're going to get there. It might take some time. I've worked on some long inquiries, and it's important to keep the staff morale, not to be sort of up and down emotionally, because that is morally and mentally draining. So you've got to keep them on that plateau that's going. And I've been involved in investigations that have gone for over a year before you get a result. But you get a result, and that's rewarding.
I'm going to take you to a happy place now, because I think we're due. Okay. I'm going to take you to the point you make around work-life balance. And football has been a huge part. I can see the smile on your face already. You started kicking a ball around growing up in Palmerston North. And I believe you've had the football bug ever since.
Yeah, it was interesting. In my life growing up, I felt that sport sort of saved me. I could have gone on the wrong side of the fence with some of my friends and stuff like that at the time. And luckily enough, I excelled at sport, and so represented married to it, both softball and football. I just always believed that sport was so good for you. Then you start coaching, and it just develops from there, and you watch the sport. And I've just seen so much good things and good people come out of some of these young sports teams. There's probably about a dozen police officers who I'd coached as young kids. Wow. And that's that feel-good factor. You're
not coaching a football club, you're running a recruitment program surreptitiously.
It worked. It worked.
I see the twinkle in your eye, and I dare say to you that the football club's a crucial part of your life for more than just your love of the game. It also brings you back to the goodness in people, which I suspect is something you need on a daily basis, to be reminded of the good people.
Absolutely. And I see all the volunteers at our club, and I know there's volunteers right across the country at sports clubs and cultural groups, all that. And I know there's a lot of police officers I know around the country who are involved in sports clubs.
That volunteering part, that giving of yourself, but not just for the community service aspect, but also for the way that it makes you feel and makes others feel, Scott.
When you're a volunteer in your community and you're giving back, it's that feel-good factor. And as I say, there's some of the young players I've coached now in the police, and that makes me feel good. Now, if you feel good about yourself, it's a positive. If you're not feeling good about yourself, you can go downhill. The football is a really good work-life balance. I've really enjoyed it.
And I guess being around those people who share your passion is so rewarding for you to be able to switch off from your day-to-day, go there, realise that a huge percentage of people in this country are great people just looking to live a good life.
There's thousands of volunteers around the country give up their time for their sports clubs and other clubs, and I take my hat off to them.
And you mentioned the fact often too that you deal with a very small percentage of society on a day-to-day basis. But I guess this also reminds you that the vast percentage are completely different and not people we have to worry about in the way that you do daily.
Look, I keep reminding myself, and I say to the staff at times, like 80 to 90% of New Zealanders are decent, law-abiding people who are, pro the police, supportive of the police. But in our world, 80 to 90% of our work is to deal with that sort of 10 to 20%. And so suddenly that's all you're seeing, but it's not like that. You've got to take a step back and go, no, most New Zealanders and the youth coming through are fine and good. And, I see them at the surf club, I see them at the football club, and I go, we're in good hands in the future.
Life's good. Family, how important to you to derive your energy from them and to give energy back to them, the right kind of energy?
Oh, the family's important. I have grandchildren now. I want to be a happy, fun, playing granddad, not sort of moping around, sad sack type thing. So, I want to look after myself because they're all important. Your family's your family. And as I say, I have my work-life balance. I compartmentalise things. Obviously, my children are all adults and grown up, and they're all doing well, and that makes me feel really good. And
talked about mental well-being. Physical well-being is also key to you, and you've just touched on it. But a couple of battles with the rust, as we might say, a couple of pretty genuine cancer scares. For someone who's fit, and healthy and active, was that a bolt out of the blue the first time something was discovered?
Yeah, so when I turned 50, I decided, right, my mother died of cancer the year before. I thought, right, I'm going to a medical checkup every year, see my doctor, GP. And I did, and then in beginning of 2019 in the February, and I'd just been over to the UK for the Grace Mullane case, and got back end of January, middle of February, went to my doctor, and the blood test for the PSA, which is prostate, had come back and was elevated. And he said, well, it's a lot higher than last year. We'll get you back in 6 weeks. I'm back in 6 weeks, and it was a lot higher again. He said, okay, off to the urologist. Ultimately, prostate cancer, and had to have the prostate out. It was a lot more advanced and aggressive, but it's, when you're told that you've got cancer, it's that C word and it's that top 2 inches that you have to deal with, because a lot of people don't survive. So, you sort of family, and then you mentally have to prepare yourself. And I thought, my surgeon, urologist, was really good in terms of he talked to me and told me and talked about it, and I could do some research. And like when it comes to prostate cancer, it's something like 94% survive. So, I was remaining positive, and I tell myself, stay positive, you're going to beat this. And my mother had cancer, and when she first got it, she was given 18 months, and she said, no, I'm going to beat this. It was 14 years later. So, I thought, right, no, I'm going to be positive and beat it. And of course, then during the COVID period, I go to the doctor again in February, a couple of years ago, and at the end he just said, is there anything else? And I said, I've got this niggly cough. I said, I was probably just because I had to wear a mask all the time. Well, he feels and I've got a lump, and so I had a cancerous growth in my thyroid, so I had to have my thyroid out. And of course, the thyroid impacts on a whole lot of things, weight, emotion, just body temperature, everything. So it's like the computer for your body. And at the same time, the surgeon doing that, he said, you got a dodgy mole. I said, no, I get it checked, it's fine. He said, telling you it's dodgy, take it out, it's melanoma. So I have to go back, and I have to take out another big chunk. And but it's a wake-up call, and I can't change that, but I can watch what I eat, drink, try and stay as healthy as possible. And I'll try and get the message out there, like take charge yourself and get yourself checked. It's not difficult, because it could save your family a whole lot of grief, could save you your life.
Each one of those diagnoses, to someone who wasn't mentally tough, otherwise physically fit, finding the positives in life, it could have knocked them for 6. Do you think that the way you dealt with that was a culmination of your development of mental coping techniques, mental strength that you had learned on the job or from others around you?
Well, ultimately, I think, I brought up with my mother, and she was pretty tough in those days, but very resilient. And I think I learned got a lot of resilience from her, but also within working in the police. You take some knocks, you take some criticism. We all worked in the Springbok tour, worked in the Queen Street riot, and you do develop this resilience, because you can please some of the people some of the time. You're not going to please all the people all the time. But the resilience, as I say, when it came to the health, right, you can do this.
I think sometimes we use resilience as a code word for what we used to call harden up.
Yeah.
We still do, as men, have this idea, you're resilient. Often means you don't talk about your problems, you just front up, you go, you ignore the warning signs. That's not what resilience means these days though, is it? And you would be more aware of that than most.
Yeah, well, as I say, that's why going to this police psychologist taught me about, the accumulation effect. Yes, you can be resilient, but they're not necessarily going to stop that accumulation effect. So what are you going to do? What strategies are you going to have? And as I say, I have my work-life balance. I compartmentalise things.
In your line of work, and you've touched on this before, you've seen the impact that COVID has had, that I dare say the cost of living is having on families out there. There is a desperation sometimes that many of us just aren't aware of, that doesn't get reported on, but you see it firsthand and you see the results of it firsthand. What can we all do to help each other out in situations like this where times are a little bit tough? How can we as citizens go out of our way to help others through tough times?
I think it's about listening and understanding and not judging. I have staff who tell me about going to different houses, for youth offenders. And, they say, no wonder they're not at home. In the old days, the policing was bang, it's black and white. You did something wrong, that's it, you're accountable for it. But now I think we can understand that there's a lot more issues going on. Actually, I've just had a recent example of one of the staff did a great job where, a young family, there's 3 children, and dad had assaulted one of the children, and he accepted that and put his hand up, but they had such a tough life. The staff member found some funding and bought the family a trampoline. Now, we would never have done that when I was young, but we've got to think outside the square now. We've got to think, some of these people, they are struggling. They need support.
If there's one lesson you've learned through close to 44 years of policing, the most crucial thing to be able to wake up each day with a positive frame of mind, what would it be?
Well, obviously I've had my health scares. So if people say, how are you? I'm great, I woke up alive. And I know there's a bit of humour in that, but it's true. And there's a lot of people who don't get that and suffer. And I never wake up not wanting to go to work because I just think it's such a good job. We're doing such an important role within the community. No, we're not going to always get it right. I understand that, but we're all human. But the staff I have, I know and I can see they are doing their best to help the community out there, knowing also that they have their families at home. And as I say to them, family comes first.
Family first is a nice way to end it. Detective Inspector Scott Baird, thanks for being on The Upside.
Thanks, Scotty.
If anything in this program has raised concerns for you or someone you know, please contact Lifeline on 0800 54 3354 or free text HELP on 4357.
The Upside, brought to you by AIA Vitality. Find out more at aiavitality.co.nz.